In today's video, we're going to be talking about crocheted ribbing. This is an example of crocheted ribbing. I have here a leg warmer, and on both ends I have some ribbing. And this is what ribbing looks like. So the thing about crocheted ribbing is you have to chain how long you want your ribbing, and then you crochet the length of it. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and you get this nice fabric, and it's got some stretch to it, and it's just great for cuffs, for brims, anything and everything. So I'm going to show you how to do it. I just have some worsted weight yarn and my hook, and to crochet ribbing, first you're going to make your slip knot. And now you're going to chain as wide as you want your piece of ribbing. So if you're doing a 2-inch cuff for a sweater, you're going to chain 2 inches because that's how wide your ribbing is going to be. So I'm just going to chain a little bit, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to chain 10 stitches. And I'm going to skip the first one, that's my turning chain, and I'm just going to single crochet in every chain to the end for this foundation row. Okay, so I've single crocheted to the end, and I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and this row and every row after, this is exactly how you're going to complete your crochet ribbing. You are going to skip your turning chain and you're just going to crochet into the back loop only throughout the entire row. Back loop only. So usually for single crochets, you go into both loops of this V. You're just going to skip the first one and go into the back loop only and complete your single crochet just like normal. That's 1, 2, you just do this all the way to the end of the row. I'm at the end of the row, and you can see I have this little ridge here. I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and do the exact same thing. And this is the same row you repeat for as long as you need your strip of ribbing. So if you were doing a cuff of a sweater, you'd chain, you want a 2-inch cuff, that's how wide you would chain, and now you would just crochet the circumference of that cuff. Okay, so I've done a couple more rows of the ribbing, and you can see this is what our ribbing is looking like. We've got these nice ridges, and it's got a bit of stretch to it. Now, we're crocheting the ribbing like this, but we need the ribbing to lay on our work, whatever that is, a brim, a cuff, whatever. We need it to lay like this. If this were a bottom-up piece, we would need this to be the bottom. Like if this were the start of a hat, we would need to make the rest of the hat go this way. And so to do that with this flat piece of fabric, what we're going to do is we're going to put our stitches across the top here. And to pick up stitches in that way, I'm going to first do a little turning chain just to give me my hook a little bit of length here. We're going to just put our stitches in between these rows. So approximately 1 stitch per row. That can change depending on the pattern, whatever stitch count you have to get, but that's just a good rule of thumb, just 1 stitch per row. I'm just going to do a single crochet. And now we go to the next row, and you can see we have this is like our ridge row from the back loop only. So we have to kind of find the spot to insert our hook. I like to try and you can kind of see the turning chain. I like to try and get my hook right in there. have stitches across the top, so our ribbing is laying in the direction we want. So we can just work, we can pretend like this is like our foundation chain, but now we have ribbing attached to it, so it's all attached and ready for whatever the next step of our project is. So that's how you insert ribbing at the start of your project. But kind of like with this leg warmer I have here, I started out with ribbing down here, and then I did my work, and then I did more ribbing at the top here. I did not sew this on, so we need to now get ribbing going in the same direction, but we need to go back and forth this way. We need to attach it, and there's a way you can do that without having to do your ribbing separately and sew it on. So let me just work this row so we have a nice clean split from the rest of our work. Okay, so I want the same amount of ribbing up top here at the end of my project as I got down here. And the way to do that is we're going to turn our work, and I'm going to chain how wide I want my ribbing. So I'm going to do the same amount I did, I think I did 10 stitches. I chained 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I chained 10, and I'm still attached to my project. I'm going to single crochet all of these stitches, skipping my turning chain. So I'm going to single crochet 9. Single crocheted to the end, and now I want to attach this to my work. So what I'm going to do is this is my first stitch of the project, I'm going to slip stitch into that stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch into the second stitch, and now I'm going to turn my work, and I'm going to skip 2 stitches. Those 2 slip stitches, I'm going to skip them, and I'm going to go to the third stitch, which is my ribbing, and crochet in the back loop only. So I have 1 slip stitch, 2 slip stitch, my cuff, and I'm going to pick up the back loop only, and single crochet, and work across the row. At the end of the row, I'm going to chain 1, and this is my repeat, I'm going to back loop single crochet only all the way to the end, and then I'm going to do that slip stitch thing again. So here's my slip stitch from the last row. I'm going to go into the next stitch, slip stitch, next stitch, slip stitch, and turn my work. And now there's my slip stitch, there's my second slip stitch, that's the ribbing. I'm going to skip those slip stitches, go into that ribbing stitch in the back loop only, and just work to the end. And you can see the result is we're getting ribbing on finishing our project with ribbing just as we started our project with ribbing. This requires no seaming, so it's perfectly seamless and just much easier than sewing strips of ribbing to your project. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is this piece is flat. We've worked this piece completely flat. So if this were like this leg warmer, we could work it completely flat and then seam it up at the end. But you can actually do it in the round. You can make your ribbing in the round and then crochet your project in the round, finish it off in the round. There's just one extra step, and that's what I'm going to show you. So to start your project, if I was like, I'm making a leg warmer here. This is the leg warmer. You start your ribbing, you make it flat, and now I'm going to join it in the round so I can actually make my project in the round. And everything's the same, you know, picking up the stitches, you just be doing it in the round, like a hat, a leg warmer, a cuff, a sleeve, whatever. But you have to start flat, and this is as wide as I want my ribbing. To put it in the round, I'm just going to fold it up. I'm going to put my hook back in this loop, tighten it, and it's perfectly straight, it's not twisted. And this is my working row, and this is my foundation row, my chaining. I'm going to put my hook in that first stitch, put my hook in the first chain at the bottom here, and just slip stitch it together. And I'm going to do it again, and it lines up really nicely, so you can easily see I'm going into both legs of those loops, and I'm just slip stitching it together. Try not to be too tight, because then your seam gets a little tight. So just trying to keep a nice tension and sew it all together. You just do this all the way to the end, and it should line up nice and good, nice and perfectly, because you know you still have the same number of stitches. And you're at the end, and you have your ribbing in the round. You do get this bit of a seam here. It's a bit of, depending, I go into both loops of my starting chain and my working row, just because I like the stability. You can play with it and maybe do one loop on each side, so you don't get this bulk of a seam, but I don't mind that, because what I like to do is I have my seam, I just flip it inside out, turn it around, and that's gone, and it's still got the stability in it. And then I can put my hook back in my loop, and just as we did for our sample, we chain one, and now I can just pick up stitches all the way around the ribbing to start my project. And that's the basics on crochet ribbing.